Here's the question. Is your character you, or is your character someone else? And I'm going to be upfront. If a table can't answer that cleanly, you're going to get drama that has nothing to do with dice. Because the second somebody says, well, your character did this, so you must think that, the game stops being make believe and starts becoming a weird personality trial. And in old school play, where risk, consequences, and hard choices are the whole point, this matters even more. If every tough call becomes a statement about real life morals, people stop taking risks. They stop playing boldly. They start playing safe socially. And the campaign gets boring. So let's get this straight in a way you can use it at the table tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're going. Your character is not you. Your character is a tool, a mask. They have a role in a shared fantasy. Now, this is a collab using YouTube's collab feature with Joe the Lawyer, Joe Block, and Mr. Welch. So I'm going to say this in a way that works across tables, whether you're an Octa type or a beer and pretzels dungeon crawler or a tactical problem solver. This applies across the board. Now, there are three basic layers here. Once you see them, the whole argument gets easier, in my opinion. Layer one is you, the player. You're the one making choices, managing risk, and deciding when to push and when to run. Layer two is the character sheet. That's the numbers, the gear, the spells, the hit points, the level, the mechanics. It's the interface in all of this. And then layer three is the character. And that character is a fictional person in a fictional world who can be brave, petty, greedy, noble, terrified, reckless, stupid, and sometimes all in the same session. When people get into trouble, it's usually because they mash layers 1 and 3 together. They assume the character's choices are the player's beliefs. But in role playing games, choices often mean this is what makes sense for the fictional person that I'm playing. Or this will be fun to play. Or this is the kind of trouble I want to stir up in the current adventure. Or this is the smart tactical move. Right? And none of those automatically translate into this is who I am. This is how I would be if the situation happened in real life. If I play a thief, that doesn't make me a liar. If I play a paladin who refuses a bribe, that doesn't mean I think everyone else at the table is corrupt if they're willing to take it. If I play a wizard who pokes the glowing skull, that doesn't mean I have poor impulse control in real life. It means I'm playing make-believe with intent. Now, OSR play is consequence forward. You make choices with incomplete information. You bargain with monsters, you retreat, you abandon treasure, you set traps. You sometimes do the smart thing instead of the heroic thing. And because the game rewards caution, cunning, and occasionally shameless survival, let's be honest, it creates moments that can look morally messy if somebody insists on reading your character like your actions are a diary entry. In a modern plot forward game, the story often nudges you toward being a certain kind of protagonist. In old school play, the world isn't different. The dungeon doesn't care. I almost said something else, but you could figure that out. The wilderness doesn't care. Your character is simply trying to survive. So if a table treats every fictional choice like a real confession, you'll strangle the best part of this hobby, which is meaningful decision making. I'm going to throw out a quick scenario. The party drops a goblin patrol. One goblin survives, bleeding out, begging. One player, we'll call him Dave for no particular reason, says, my character finishes it off. No witnesses. And suddenly somebody at the table goes, wow, that's dark. Are you okay, man? Now, that reaction might be coming from a good place, but it's aimed at the wrong target. Because Dave might not be dark. They likely aren't dark. Dave might be playing a character who has a grim practical rule. Goblins run and bring friends. You're simply cleaning up the problem. Or Dave might be playing the party's bad cop because it creates tension and tough choices. And he finds that fun. Or Dave might be thinking, we're deep in hostile territory. We can't drag a prisoner. We can't risk an alarm. If the table's response is to psychoanalyze Dave, you just punished him for engaging with the scenario. The correct move is to treat the choice as fictional first. Talk about what it means in the world. Will the local goblins retaliate? Does the party's reputation change? Do the hirelings get nervous? Does the cleric object in character? See, that's the game. That's the shared fiction doing its work. And someone personally doesn't want that content at the table, that's a totally different conversation. That's about table comfort and boundaries. That's not about accusing the player of being their character. Now, there's a term some people use. It's cold bleed. It's when emotions or attitudes slide between player and character, and bleed can happen. Sometimes it's even part of why role-playing feels intense at times. But here's the key. Bleed is not the default assumption. You don't start saying your character did X, so you feel X. Now, maybe you start by saying your character just did X. What does that actually mean for what's going on with us right now in this story, in this fiction, in this adventure? And if somebody wants to share the story or the scene hit them personally, that's fine. That's choice. That's their choice. But the table shouldn't force that interpretation onto the rest of their table. Okay? We've covered some of this recently, right? When we talked about using games for therapy. And it's putting weight on the game that doesn't really belong to be there. And it's a common mistake. And that's treating role play, and this is part of what we talked about last week to some extent, like testimony. Like every choice is a real world statement. It's almost like the character is a mask that slipped. And that's how you get lines like, so you're basically saying that you hate authority. Oh, so you're saying that you're fine with betrayal. Oh, okay, so you're saying that you do that in real life. And this is, again, putting stuff into the game that doesn't belong there. Now, the fix can be simple. It's separating the player intent from character action. And fair enough, you can say, is that you talking or the character talking? Because a lot of times, listen, we talk in first person. All right, I'm going to whack its head off. You are, or Findalin, your gnome priest, is doing it. But usually we don't have to get into that. The issues start happening because someone at the table, their own perspective of what's happening is that they're seeing things from themselves and putting themselves in their character, and they're assuming that everybody else is doing the same. Because if the answer is, I'm doing this in character, then everyone can relax and play the consequences in game. Again, there's putting certain weight on the process, on the game, that doesn't belong there. Now, There's a clean tool that you can use. All right. And we're not going to get into the weeds on this. But sometimes you play a character like you're an actor, right? What would this person do? And I often do that, right? It's like, what would my character do in this case? And sometimes you play your character like you are a commander moving a unit, or you are a war gamer moving a pawn or a chit on the table. And you're saying, what's the smart move for survival? And both are valid ways of playing. Both are role playing. And neither one is a confession of who you are. If I'm playing pawn stands tonight because I'm tired after work, it doesn't mean I don't care. It means I'm here, I'm engaged, and I'm making choices, just with different mental gear in my head. All right. We'll delve into another scenario, another potential. A party gets offered a bribe by a corrupt official. Gold now to look the other way later. And one player says, my paladin refuses. We're exposing this. Dudley do right. Another player says, well, whoa, my thief takes the bribe. We can use the money to fund the expedition. This can be a real life fight if people make an assumption that this is about real, honest to God, morals of the players. Because the paladin player can accidentally imply, oh, I'm the good person here, and the thief can feel judged. And the thief can imply you're naive and stupid, and the paladin player could feel insulted. At a healthy table, this is actually perfect, right? Because it's fictional tension that creates play. I'm not calling Joe stupid. I'm calling his paladin stupid. I'm not calling Tim stupid. I'm calling Tim's thief. Sorry, not stupid, greedy. I'm calling Tim's thief greedy and immoral. So the right move is to keep it in character. Right? Maybe the paladin threatens to walk. The thief argues practicality, because it's always practicality. The party negotiates. Maybe the hirelings pick a side. Maybe this creates a reputation in town. And that's not real life morality court. That's a campaign getting teeth. If a table can't separate those layers, the paladin stops playing a paladin, and the thief player stops playing a thief and taking risks. And everybody ends up playing the same gray mush to avoid interpersonal conflict. Don't want to offend anybody, so you offend everybody. And that's the death of an OSR campaign. So if you want a quick checklist that you can use right away, if you need to, and listen, if you have a curated group of friends that you've been playing with for a longer time, you probably don't need this. But if you're playing at a store, all right, you got a pickup group, you're playing at a convention, you can already sense that some people are strong personalities. You might just say, hey, folks, just a little reminder, characters aren't players. You only need one sense. Plant the flag. And if it gets heated during the session, then ask, is that you or your character? And argue in fiction, in campaign, in the adventure, in the scenario first. What does the world do in response? What do the NPCs do? What does the party do? And if it's a comfort issue, name it as a comfort issue. That's not a moral accusation. That's not a personality diagnosis. Just, I'd rather not have that content at our table. Stuff like, all right, I'll just say stuff like torture or certain types of abuse, right? Hey, less is more. I don't want it at my table. And let characters be wrong. Characters make bad calls. They're scared, they're greedy, they're prideful. That's part of the game. Doesn't mean the player is broken. Here's how they're playing their character. If the table adopts these habits, you get more freedom, more trust, and honestly, I think more fun. Again, many groups adapt these habits by default. You don't have to state them, and that's great. But if you have a group that has some of these issues, maybe you do need to put those cards on the table so everybody's playing with the same hand of cards. Now, there is one little wrinkle. If someone uses, well, it's what my character would do as a cover to bully or disrupt the table, ruin everyone else's fun, or keep pushing lines people have clearly drawn, that's not role playing. That's a jerk. That's an asshole. That's somebody being a prick at the table. And honestly, you're more likely to get this at a public game, at a con or a game store or the like, and it's not common. It's actually very uncommon. But your table, your curated table, you probably already kept these types of people out. But when you have them, this is where where a group lacks that sort of protection of social cohesion of an established group. The the standard you have to set is simple. Your freedom ends when you start wrecking the fun of the rest of the table. Old school games are lethal, they're risky, they're full of consequences, but they still require a basic goodwill between players and GM. So yes, character does not equal player. And table trust will actually, well, that rates above your character's purity. So is your character you or someone else? Your character is someone else, even when you borrow bits of yourself to make them feel real. Even when you give them your voice, your humor, your habits, they're still fictional. There's still a role in a shared game, a shared world, but it's a fictional world. And when the table respects that separation, you get bolder play, clearer conflict, and hopefully fewer weird personal blowups. If you want more practical OSR table tools like this, hit subscribe. Don't forget to check out Joe the Lawyer, Joe Blanc, the Greyhawk Grognard, and Mr. Welch. Their channels are linked below. Thank you, and God bless.